Bing, we have begun. As usual, we're on Google Meet. These are all the nice little tools. I think you guys have figured it out by now. That big red meeting is the one to avoid unless you really are leaving. I can't tell you how many times I've hit that when I thought I was leaving. So just beware. It's a pretty easy layout there, but just to let you know, this is the last time we'll be using Google Meet for our President Forum because we are our agency is moving. Our agency is moving to Microsoft Office. So we'll be on Teams for the June 22nd meeting. But keep your camera on and minimize distractions. This is a chance to connect to the rest of the board presidents of our advancing Virginia Main Street communities. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. That's that little hand down there, or use the chat box, either way. And I think you figured it out. We are recording this. And so we have some Virginia Main Street representatives that are here today. Courtney, you want to say hi? Courtney's out and
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day today. And for those who watch the recording later, we really appreciate all the leadership and influence that you bring to our Main Street organizations. Your contributions are really important, and we want you to know how much we appreciate what you're doing for your community.
Thank you, Courtney. And Nicole, are you there just outside the camera screen? Did you want to poke your head in and just wave?
Nicole is working on a super secret project that will be revealed in April. So she's in another conference call on the other side of the room.
Ooh, that's tantalizing. Oof. Who else do we have from the team that can wave and say hello? Ellie.
Hi,
Ellie's
good
right
morning,
there.
everybody. I'm the newest PA. I got started in October, and I'll be working with communities in the Shenandoah Valley. It's nice to be with everyone this morning.
Awesome. Thanks, Ellie. And then let's see, Zachary, I think you're here.
Yeah, I'm here. Hey, everybody. I'm Zachary Whitlow, and I work with Main Street communities, specifically in Southern Virginia. So good to see all of you.
Yeah. And so Blair is in Warrenton, so she's saying hello through the chat. So Blair, thanks so much. And Blair is primarily Northern Virginia, and then I have Eastern Virginia all the way to the Eastern Shore, so the coast. Thanks everybody for being here. Agenda today, this is a triannual gathering, and it's really an opportunity to bring all of you guys together for a little bit of networking and boosting Main Street efficacy in the community. So we always have a little bit of chit chat in the beginning. I'm going to have some announcements for you, and we've got a fabulous guest speaker that I'm excited about because I haven't gotten to work with her in a while. We'll have plenty of time for discussion, and then we'll adjourn. We do go until 12:15. And as usual, just a group agreement, embrace curiosity. If you have a question, feel free to ask it. You got the hand raised, you got the chat. So put that out there. And certainly don't feel bashful. We're all figuring it out, and we're all at different levels of experience in our roles. So we can all lift each other up and help each other. And keep in mind that if you take space, meaning if you like to talk and you're very comfortable with it, remember there's some folks that aren't, and so they need to be encouraged a little bit more. So if you take space, be mindful of how long you're chatting and leave room for other folks. And then other than that, stay connected. We'll share the board president's list with you following the meeting, along with the recording and some other materials. Feel free to reach out to any of the other board presidents. Announcements. This is all training oriented at this point. We've got a lot coming up. So March 16th is the next webinar in our Switch to Six series. So we're talking about the new Main Street America Community Accreditation Standards, which most of you all should have experienced with that self-assessment that we utilized this year. So a little different than what we've been using in the past, but we're going to hit every single one of those 6 standards over 6 months. Every other month is a training opportunity. So March 16th is the next one, Inclusive Leadership and Organizational Capacity with Dion Bowe, who's also with Main Street America, and Urban Maine specifically. So she's in Chicago. And then March 27th through 29th is the Main Street Now Conference in Boston. Hopefully some of you are able to go. I know that a lot of the executive directors will be attending that, and we've been able to provide scholarships to a great deal of them. In May, we'll also have a little bit of a break in April, and then May is our first in-person training since before the pandemic. So we're back to doing our rev-ups, which are small regional half-day workshops. It's an opportunity to get a little workshop a little closer to home to make it easier for you to access, and then meet some of the other community leaders in your area. This time we'll be talking about diverse funding and sustainable program operations, and Jennifer Goldman will be leading that. And some of you may have met her, especially the newer, latest round of designated communities that came on board. So May 16th in Fredericksburg, May 17th in Alta Vista, May 18th in Bristol. And then June 22nd is the next board forum, but know that you can always reach out to your Virginia Main Street representative if you have any questions. Just a few little reminders about tools that you have at your fingertips. Because you're designated community, you have access to the Virginia Main Street Design Services. This is with Fraser Associates, so they provide facade drawings, conceptual landscape drawings that help you think about parking improvements or any of those exterior factors to improve the environment in your downtown. And she does more extensive stuff too. So definitely take a look at the Design Service newsletter. So you can access that by clicking on this. These are all hyperlinked, by the way, and use the password VMS documents. And so you can see all that stuff, the forms that you need, and the depth of the services that we offer. We're also institutional members of the Center for Nonprofit Excellence, which is in Charlottesville. So they have their own, that makes you all members. So that means that's for free. So another level of assistance in helping you with your journey in nonprofit management. And then another free resource is nonprofitready.org. So it's a philanthropic arm of a for-profit software company. It is chock full of these little modules. So you can actually take a little quiz, learn something, take a little quiz, earn a little certificate. It's great. I'm really impressed with the level of the quality of the resources that are in there. So check it out. You just have to click on that link. And then lastly, of all my announcements here, fiscal year 24, our grant cycle is currently open. Applications are due the end of April 28th, and that includes our downtown investment grant, which funds any projects in your district that support your economic development plan or your transformation strategies, your work plan. So it goes across the 4 points, as you can imagine. The financial feasibility grant funds the study of the highest and best use for an underutilized commercial building. You have the resurgence grant, which is open to the entire Commonwealth, so it's a bit more competitive. So that's $100,000. It's a very similar grant design at downtown investment, the downtown investment grant. And then you have the community business launch also. So that's a pitch competition, a great way to grow, incubate some new businesses. And with the program, you also need to have some real estate lined up. So as soon as the courses are done and the pitch is done and the grants have gone out, the awards, that particular business or those businesses can move into the storefront. So it's a really great way to build up new businesses within the district in a very short period of time and filling those vacancies. So if you want to find out more about that, the hyperlink, the Virginia Main Street Program website, will take you to the grant manual. So it can go into the details. There's also a recording there of the how to apply workshop. So take a look. So I bet you have some great ideas for some projects. And just to let you know we just had the retreat with the board presidents, the executive directors 2 weeks ago, and we worked through each of these, doing a little bit of project development with them around each one of these grants. So hopefully they've brought some ideas to the table, or brought them from you to us during those conversations. All right, this is just a little bit of a ramp up to our speaker. So as you know, there's sort of 3 levels of participating in Virginia Main Street. We've got the mothership, which is Main Street America, or the National Main Street Center. So they're the ones that created this whole national network and offer their own level of technical assistance. You should be members of that and utilize that membership. So you have a login and all that kind of stuff to use the point for networking or any of their pre-recorded webinars and their guides there. Then we're the state coordinating program. We have our own level of resources, which you heard about. And then it's locally driven. This is where the rubber hits the road. It's all the great work that you all are doing. And you all are the Advancing Virginia Main Street program tier. When you're doing Main Street, there are some key benchmarks for success to know about. So you just went through this process with the accreditation standards, specifically the new ones, and they're really there to help you understand and highlight your program's work and achievements, really understand how to best do the work that you're doing. And so there's a self-assessment that's involved. We also go through these accreditation reviews and planning every year. I know each one of you have experienced that probably in the last couple of weeks. And this accreditation is valuable because it recognizes the programs that operate with the highest standards. You get a brand after it's over that you get to use on your website. You are accredited for 2023. And by the way, after these review meetings, the accredited communities will be announced at the National Main Street Center, and then shortly after that, at the Main Street Now conference, pardon me, you'll receive the branding package to be able to add this mark of distinction to your website and use it in your marketing. But this can help you out with just understanding those benchmarks for fundraising and volunteer development and overall sustainability. So if you're looking for that guide of, you know, where do you need to go? What ball do you need to keep your eye on? The accreditation standards can certainly help you out with it. And keep in mind that Main Street America has their Great American Main Street Award that they do every year, and those announcements will be made at Main Street Now. You have to be accredited a Virginia Main Street designated community in order to do that. So this is something that it is an incentive to work towards. So that's one of them. Your baseline requirements for accreditation, you have to have that board of directors. You need to have those strategic focus areas. So those large overarching goals. The jargon around Main Street America is transformation strategies. Don't let that transformation word scare you. So just think strategic focus areas. You need to have your detailed work plans. You need to have demonstrated support from your municipality. You also have to have an adequate budget in order to do the great work that you're doing. And so this is just a nice little range to help you understand your targets. Some of you are going over and beyond this, and good on you, keep it up. And then paid professional staff, you have to have an executive director. If you're smaller than 5,000, it can be part-time, but believe me, that executive director will be working more than 20 hours. So certainly aim for a full-time executive director if you're able to afford it. You have to do your reporting statistics quarterly, and you need to be a member of Main Street America. And so these are the 6 accreditation standards: broad-based community commitment to revitalization, inclusive leadership and organizational capacity, diverse funding and sustainable program operations, strategy-driven programming, preservation-based economic development, and demonstrated impact and results. And if you want to learn a little bit more about them, these little hyperlinks will take you to some mini videos. But hopefully you're learning along the way as we move through this. So my mouth is dry. I'm done with my part. And I can't wait to introduce you to Kathy LaPlante. And I do have a few little talking points. Let me get to them. Where'd they go? Kathy has been with the National Main Street Center for, what did I see, 25 years?
No,
you've been in the field.
Almost 16 now.
There you go. But Kathy started off in retail, and then she moved into being an executive director for a local Main Street program. And then she worked into being a coordinator for a state coordinating program. And then she continued on. So this is to the National Main Street Center. So this is a woman who is absolutely committed and has Main Street pumping through her veins. And she is very passionate about the work she does. So I am so happy to have her here today and share a little bit of wisdom and then have a great conversation with you guys afterwards. But ask some questions along the way. We're happy to intervene.
Yeah,
Kathy?
thanks, Kyle. I appreciate that. One of my favorite things, that I do with Main Street is working with boards of directors. I appreciate all that you put in as far as your volunteer time, and I know you're making financial commitments to your programs as well. But every year at our Main Street Now conference, I lead the board member roundtable. And I do that with Stephen Hoffman, who is with the Missouri Main Street program. And we spend 3 hours with board chairs and board members, really just trying to hone in and focus in on common issues that you're all having. So sometimes we're talking about fundraising, and other years we've played we've played Jeopardy, and we've played Family Feud when we did a survey of 100 executive directors across the country to just give board members a better idea, sort of, how executive directors interpret board participation and the struggles they have in their jobs. And so I think we've played Family Feud a couple times, but what's the number one reason you would leave your job? For example, is one of the questions that we asked, and maybe you can all stew on that, and I'll come back to that at the end, and you can give me your guesses as to why your ED would leave the job. So I'll stop there. But why don't we go ahead? Sorry, Kyle, and enter in the chat box what you thought you wanted to be when you grew up. Doesn't have to be the current job that you're in now. What did you want to be when you were a kid? School teacher. Yeah, that was me. And I think Main Street fits that for me as well. A scientist. Kyle wants to be a rock star. Surgeon, lawyers, mothers. That's a good one. Couple doctors. A farmer. That's a good one. Those are all good and old. Come on, Glenn. That's a good one. Instead of a profession, we just want to age, right? Hairdresser. Yep. Musician. Well, of course, yes. Army officer. That's a good one. Yeah, those are all good positions that people might want to have. And what I'd like to point out here is usually when we're young, we never see ourselves as a leader of a nonprofit organization, right? It's sort of like it never came across my radar screen when I was young. We're always looking for that profession that we're going to earn our living at, or something that will make us happy. And we don't really think about what that engagement might look like for us in the community. If you want to go to the next slide, Kyle. So, in my opinion, board members, especially Main Street board members, are superheroes. You're fierce advocates for your downtown. You show up at meetings like this. You're committing your time and your money to support projects and programming in your community. The best thing about Main Streeters is even when obstacles are thrown in our path, we figure out how to address that and overcome that. And when the going gets tough, we just carry on and say, you know what, nothing's ever going to work out perfectly, but it's how we respond to those things that aren't so perfect that, really make our organizations. And I think the overall thing, and what I think is always important for you as board members, not only to believe in, but also to pass on to the people who will follow after you, is that Main Street isn't a program that is just for the betterment of the property and business owners in your community. You know that this is something that when we make great improvements to our downtown, it's good for everybody in the community. When building values are higher in downtown, it translates to home values being higher in a community, because it becomes a quality of life issue. People want to live there. You're creating jobs. You're increasing the tax base. all of those things help you as a community. Sometimes we don't tell our story that way. And so I challenge you to see if that's the story you're telling to everybody in your community is, this is good for all of us. While Main Street, we draw a boundary around the area that we're working on, our impact goes well beyond those boundaries. I just told a story yesterday here at the conference I'm at in California, that the first year when I was an executive director and we ran a Christmas parade, 10,000 people showed up. I was blown away. I was hoping for 2,500 and 10,000 showed up. But McDonald's 4 miles outside of our downtown called me the next day to say, do that again. We were so busy after that parade. People had to wait 45 minutes for a cup of coffee. And I always kept that story because people would say, well, why am I not included in your boundary? That little map just says this is where we're going to concentrate our efforts. And so if we have grants, we want to focus them here because this is the heart of our community. But everything we're doing here benefits everybody. So make sure you're telling that message. And I know that that's why you're in this. It's sort of like just how do we continue to tell that story? Next one, Kyle. And that's the message, is sort of like, how do we bring the community together? How do I make sure that 10 years from now, when Kyle invites me back to participate in this board forum again, that the same people aren't here? So 10 years from now, none of you should probably be here unless you rotated off, took a break, and came back on. Then that's okay. But we need to make sure that we're establishing a continuum of leaders being developed in the community. So we have to build that sense of ownership in a community, again, to go way beyond it's for the property and business owners, but really engaging people. And so how do we do that? Is that evident on your website? Is there a place where I can donate to you, but is there also a place that I can volunteer at? And are we always inviting people to give their opinions about downtown? One of the things I do a lot before I visit places is visit all your websites. And it's always good to have somebody do that and give you their impression of it. But it is, and even your social media, I think social media is more to my point here, is that we do a great job of promoting our events and our businesses in downtown. I'll go through and see that you're all sharing a special at the restaurant, or something, a new business opened, or we have a Easter egg hunt coming up. But we don't do as much to just promote your organization. How often do you feature a board member on your social media, or talk about, why you're on the board, and tell people that this is something that they can volunteer for as well? So we need to make sure that in addition to promoting our downtown, you promote the mission of the organization, build that sense of ownership. Next one, Kyle. And the 4 points, right? The 4 points, and that's all about the new accreditation, is to make sure, and Kyle, I agree, don't be scared by that word transformation. I actually don't like using that word either. I call it an economic strategy, but something that will guide the work of your organization, and just make sure it's balanced across those 4 points. Main Street programs get in trouble when they're just the festival throwers. If we're not, helping our small businesses, if we're not working on the design component and primarily focusing on organization. Because frankly, what I find in many communities, organization is sort of foisted off onto the staff. Oh, public relations, staff does that. Fundraising, staff does that. Volunteer development, staff does that. We forget that that is probably the most key component of our organization, and we need to develop our work plans that address all the organizational issues as well, and not just make staff do all that. So let's go on to the next one. Here's that balancing act. How have you made those decisions in the past with the work that you do? That goes back to, what is your economic or transformation strategy? If it is an arts strategy, you want to be an arts and culture downtown, that isn't just a promotional thing. It's under economic vitality. It's, do we want more galleries? Do we want one of those paint and drink shops? Do we want performance studios? Do we want theater, organization? Do we have artists represented on our board? Are our fundraisers more in line with arts and, you know, how we would promote that? And design, well, obviously we can do a lot of cool things with public art, mural, et cetera. And then promotion, it's a little bit easier under promotion to do those kind of art activities. Instead of a wine walk, we might have an art walk. So it's really thinking about your 4 committees working together and not in silos. You know, how are we all sharing with, you know, the development of even catering to our downtown workers and residents? Some of your communities have huge populations of residents living there and also people working there. So what are we doing specifically under the 4 points to engage those people? So think about how you've made decisions in the past with your work, if you've had transformation strategy visits to help you with that, but always try to keep that balance of work. Next one, Kyle. This kind of relates to the slide that Kyle showed at the beginning with the different levels of our programming. You're the center of all the activity. You know, what goes on locally is what, you know, you can be focused on, but you also have your, oops, I got the Kansas logo in there. I forgot to change that to the Virginia logo. God darn it. Is your coordinating program partner. And then you have Main Street America, and both Virginia Main Street and Main Street America have a lot of resources. Virginia has some of the most outstanding resources of any of our coordinating programs. The fact that you have Kathy Frazier to turn to for design assistance and all the grant programs that are tied in with all the work happening at Virginia Main Street, plus all the trainings that are out there focusing on the board, but also for your executive directors. It's pretty phenomenal a list of assistants. And then we also have your Main Street America resources. You all have memberships to us, and through your membership with us, you get 4 sub memberships. So I hope all board chairs are signed on as sub members to your Main Street America account, because that gives you access to use our listserv that we call The Point, but it also gets you access to all of our previously recorded webinars, all our books and publications. And, you know, there's just a wealth of resources out there for you all. So you're the center, and support comes from both the coordinating program and Main Street America. You know, we're pushing out grants like nobody's business these days as well, with the T-Mobile grants, the American Express grants, Google grants. Oh my goodness, there's so much money coming through us now. It's pretty impressive as well. Next slide, Kyle. And then, you know, here's your commitment as well as program leaders, is that you're doing 2 things. You're building a sustainable district transformation or carrying on with economic development, and you're also creating an effective revitalization program. So there's a twofold thing there. We kind of sometimes get caught up in the projects that we're doing and then don't think as much about our organization and the funding for it and the volunteer support and the leadership development for our program. So we have to just be cognizant that so we aren't the same people at the table 10 years from now. How do we build that sustainable programming? So you'll see in the new standards for national accreditation, the old standard used to say you have an adequate operating budget. Our new standard says you must have a sustainable fundraising or a sustainable resource. And so we look more long-term. We don't want to know, oh yeah, you were able to pay your executive director on December 31st, but that you actually have a plan in place that is going to secure the sustainability of the organization over time. You know, who are those partners, so that we don't every year have to go back and beg for that money, so that they see the real quality and value. And Virginia is a great example. You've got, you know, communities like Culpeper, Stanton, Great American Main Street Award winning communities that have been in the program a long time and well beyond when they won that national award. Winning the Great American Main Street Award does not mean things are done. It just means we had a fantastic year, and we met some really great goals for our downtown, but we're not done. Main Street is never done. It's always changing. Next one, Kyle. Again, just building that program, and we'll just open it up for people to sort of chime in here, so you can turn on your cameras. But Kyle had. We talked yesterday and said, what was one of those things that really ignited your spirit, or a project in your community that you were so inspired by that maybe your enthusiasm was contagious to other people, and you were able to ask people to join in. I actually just read, I'm a big fan of Joan Gary, who has a lot of great nonprofit pieces. I'm part of her leadership lab. This morning she put out a piece on, it was doing fundraising like you were a 10-year-old. She says the kids, they come home with something to sell. They ask you, you say yes, they call the grandparents. And she's like, why are we so afraid of fundraising? When it's so simple as a child. And I thought, and she's like, you should be inspired by it. And I thought, well, what inspires you? What was a time that you really felt inspired and ignited to take on a new project with your program? So let's open it up. Anybody want to chime in with what that was for you?
This is Glenn from Culpeper. It's something that really just is in the process of occurring right now. We have a caboose that has been renovated on the outside. The inside is totally vacant. And so we're just starting a project to tie in all of the local people that would be interested, the museum, the Visitors Bureau, the economic development for the town and the county, and do a feasibility study to figure out what we can really do with that. It's been sitting there on our, gosh, we want to do that for a while, and we're actually getting it moving. So that's, like I say, started really in the last couple of weeks.
That's super. Thanks, Glenn. Go ahead, Bill.
So this is Bill Stram from Cape Charles. we're kind of like Glenn in that we've just started this process. We're working with the town. We're going to put in a welcome center / bathroom / our Cape Charles Main Street office, a new building, new construction. It's going to look like a railroad terminal, and it's going to be right next to a passenger car, train car that we've kept over because we no longer have trains here, and storyboard the history of Cape Charles through the train, and that's how Cape Charles was founded. So that's a big project. So,
and what's Main Street's role going to be in that, Bill?
well, the train is ours, belongs to Main Street. We call it Tammy's train. She was the past president before me. So that train is ours, and we're totally paying for that, the renovation of that. We're also helping the town with the Welcome Center. We provided over probably $160,000 in that regard. So yeah, we're working hand in glove with the town.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Find a piece of your history, commit to protecting it, reusing it. That I could see how that would get people excited and even open up their pocketbooks or even be part of the process or come to those planning meetings. That's a great one. Thanks for sharing, Bill.
I'd like to share a recent success that we had.
All right, go ahead, Scott.
We just launched the Spark Innovation Center. So that was a project that was very much driven through the Main Street program about 5 years ago when we started. It's a co-working space, an innovation center. We converted an old fire station that was in the middle of downtown into this facility, and AOT and its access to DHCD funding for the feasibility study. We went to the USDA for equipment. The Tobacco Commission pitched in, but we're super excited to have that launched. And it's got 5 offices, and all 5 are full after the first week with businesses that were not in downtown previously.
Very good. That's great. And maybe if you don't have something that says, you know, when was the last time you felt ignited, maybe you have an idea for a project that would ignite you for your community. Is there something that you might say, if we would just do this, I think it might get me ignited, and it might get other people in our community ignited as well.
Adrian.
Oops, you're on mute.
There we are. Sorry. I wanted to say that it was sort of a negative impact that caused us to get started 20 years ago. The largest Walmart on the East Coast was built 5 minutes from our downtown Main Street. And when that happened, my late husband and I looked at each other and said, it's going to kill our downtown. Because it literally was the largest Walmart on the East Coast in our county. This is Gloucester County, which has about 35,000 people in the entire county. And so we went to work and bought a defunct shopping center and turned it around, put it in a trust. And it's what funds all the Main Street programs that we have been doing for the last 20 years. So that's what got us started.
I tell your story. When I'm out on the road, I typically say there are no self-sustaining Main Street programs, except in Gloucester. Because of that, and because of what you did, and that is inspiring, and certainly is a great way to secure the long-term sustainability of an organization. So that is fantastic, and I do tell that story. Whenever I do fundraising, Gloucester's in there.
I'm glad to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Kathy, we have a few other communities that are venturing into property ownership, like Danville and the River Districts Association. Tazewell has a piece of property in downtown, and they're figuring out what to do with it. So I think that Gloucester's method is starting to catch on. We're really seeing the opportunities around that kind of social entrepreneurism.
Yeah, you know, sometimes when we start our little nonprofits, you know, we are so narrowly focused on, well, it'd be nice if we could operate with $50,000 a year when there's so much greater potential. And looking at property ownership is definitely one of those. Sometimes it's tricky because people think you might be competing with the other landowners who have property for rent or whatever they might be using it for. But it really makes good sense for long-term sustainability of an organization. We always talk about diversifying your funding sources. So make sure you get municipal money, make sure you get, maybe in Tennessee, they get a lot of county money. Other places, counties is not a funding source, but the private sector, and not just your downtown property and business owners, because it goes back to that message of this is good for everybody. And so everybody ought to be participating financially. It's even making decisions of, we're going to stop doing free events. We have to have sponsorships. We might charge admission, but it's not Main Street's job to throw free festivals for the community. We need to have better goals for that. And if we're going to spend, 300 volunteer hours and 400 staff hours, we better be getting something out of it besides doing a free festival for the community. There's always an opportunity to generate some funds. So good to hear that. Anybody else have a story you want to share about what has ignited you in the past or might ignite you for the future?
I would like to say I'm Corey Blanch from Fredericksburg, Virginia. I'm just starting out as president. I've been on the board for the past 2 years under Economic Vitality, and before I was elevated to this position, we launched First Friday, and we had to do it without an executive director, and it was really difficult. But it is one of the coolest things that we have done for the town. It's been a great response to it. And it's kind of been like the beginning of, if we are going to do events through Main Street, we want to do events that inspire movement and exploration throughout Fredericksburg. So the First Friday event has a thing attached to it called Sip and Stroll. We're the second city in Fredericksburg in Virginia to use the DORA permit, which allows us to do open containers with businesses within a particular district. Manassas was the first, and it has been a big success so far, and there's plenty of room to grow and make it stronger.
Oh, fantastic. So you're going to be an example others can turn to, like, how did you navigate getting that permit and doing the Sip and Stroll? Because, boy, those have been just hugely successful all over, and making the cash registers ring for the businesses, but just getting people into businesses they've never been in before, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's worked
So
out
did
pretty well.
Ann retire?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Your executive director, you said you didn't have an executive director.
Yes. Yeah. So Ann Glave left, and while we were searching, we have a new executive director now. He's been in the position for the past 7 months. His name is Brendan Kelly. But we had to, First Friday was kind of like our baby, so we had to try to keep it alive until we got the support that we needed.
I'm not on the road as often, so I didn't know Ann had left. So, but I've been to Fredericksburg several times. Great downtown.
Yeah,
this is Glenn Hofer again. If I could just say a real quick thing on DORA, we found out that you can't have a police officer that's in your district on your board as a voting member if you're getting a DORA permit. We just have encountered that in the last week. So just if others are thinking of doing DORA kind of permits, that's just something you have to keep in mind.
Well, that's an interesting.
It is, and something I'll add to that. So I don't know if that's codified, but from working with other communities across Virginia and applying for and implementing DORA, it's relatively new legislation. And so each of those ABC regional offices have different levels of understanding of it, some more than others. And those who have a better understanding, it's easier to implement. But those who are just learning of it, it gets to be a bit of a challenge to navigate, a bit of a headache. So just know that for those communities who have gotten through some of the sort of the red tape or the conversations or helping to educate those new officers, use your network here, because that's what helped sort of break through. Well, this community did it and they were able to do this. Well, then talk to that particular ABC officer. So if you see what I'm saying, it's you all are, there's 5 or 6 Virginia Main Street communities who are utilizing this at this point. And it's a little bit of a challenge to get started, but once you do, it's incredibly powerful for small business promotion and creating some activity in downtown. Hburg, awesome.
Offering Harrisonburg as a resource as well.
Yeah.
Andrea, your executive director, used to work at the National Main Street Center, so we keep a close eye on her and all the exciting things. Another Great American Main Street Award-winning community, I should add. I should have probably have memorized all the Virginia GAMSA winners. Stanton, Culpeper, Harrisonburg. Who else? Any others?
I think Zachary can rattle them off.
And
Am I putting you on the spot, Zachary?
Manassas.
I think
Manassas, okay.
Lynchburg, I think too.
Oh, Lynchburg, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, good ones.
We'll make
Other
a playing
stories.
deck.
What was that, Courtney? Say it again.
We'll make a card deck.
There you go.
Love that. And you have a semifinalist to this year. Other stories. What's going to inspire you? Could be a project that's 5 years out that maybe you don't even know how to attack it at the time, but is there something that would inspire you that might even draw more volunteers to your program if they thought, oh, I didn't know we could actually take on a project like that? Go right ahead, Adriana.
So we're looking at trying to do a beautification project on our main street with the county. It's going to be a process, going to take some time to figure out how to work with it, because the biggest problem seems to be identifying which parts of Main Street are under VDOT's supervision, which parts are privately owned, which parts are county supervision. It's quite complicated. I don't know if you have any suggestions as to how to achieve that map.
Oh man, it's good to be aware that those are all the people you need to check in with. I always found even putting up your welcome to a Virginia Main Street community signs proved to be a challenge for people, because was it going in the state right away, in the county right away, the city right away? All of those things. Yeah, I don't know that there's any easy way to work through that process. But I don't know, Kyle, if you have anything to add to sort of what they're taking on.
Well, Adrian, what I'm witnessing so far already is your relationship and that partnership and collaboration with the county. So you're on that journey already of getting the right people at the table to make it happen. Kathy Frazier can be helpful with that too, because not only, Frazier's got a ton of experience navigating infrastructure investment within the districts and these design related projects. But she's got staff too that get into the nitty gritty, really get into that technical aspect of dealing directly with VDOT. Really understanding anything from new sidewalks and paving to wayfinding and electric vehicle charging stations. And I do have a guide. It's old, so I don't know how helpful it'd be. I have to look back at it, but it's about when a state highway or route goes through your main street, and it's older, but it helps to sort of understand navigating that. So let me note to take a look at that and share that with you.
Thank you.
Because that's your situation, is it not? That's part of the problem. Is it's a state route?
I guess.
Isn't it?
Is
Yeah.
it? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a VDOT road.
Yeah.
And some of the property in front of businesses is owned by the business. The county maintains a lot of the little bump outs where the landscaping occurs, but we may maintain it, but that doesn't necessarily make it ours.
Yeah.
So trying to navigate all of those, and nobody seems to have all of the information, which has been interesting.
Right. Yeah. And now I know, Katie, Kathy Frazier has some very specific and long relationships with VDOT employees. And so they're usually able to clarify some things or get to the right people pretty quickly. So remember that resource. Because I believe from talking with Jenny Crittenden years ago that you all couldn't even put up awnings because they were too close to this right of way, and good grief, what a what a character defining feature in providing shade to your customers. These are necessities, so yeah.
Sometimes you have states that they want to, like some building inspectors, they're just going to follow the letter of the law and say no, instead of helping you figure out the way to yes. So I think those relationships are always so key, so if Kathy Frazier has some good relationships at DOT, I'd make use of those. I was out in a community in Nevada, a little tiny town, Wells, Nevada. They got actually hit by an earthquake maybe 12, 15 years ago, and it leveled half the buildings in their little downtown. And it's a very wide main street. It's a state highway. And there are probably only maybe 6 operating businesses on it anymore, one of which was the Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber put out 2 flower pots outside their office, and the DOT came by and took them. Now, maybe 500 cars go down this main street every day in this tiny town because the interstate is right next to it. And that's how nasty the DOT was. That was like one of the bright spots on their main street was these 2 little flower pots out, and they came and took them and said, you can't put anything out here in the right of way. So we always hope to have cordial relationships with our DOTs and understand that they have some rules and regulations. But as Kyle said, why should that stop you from putting an awning up? That's just craziness. And so we need to change some things if that's happening. But how about, moving on to the second question there, which is, what does your program need to succeed? And I'll even say to continue success, since we have a number of already Great American Main Street Award-winning communities on this line. But, how do you see that next phase of success? And then what do you need? And I think this would be a helpful question to both Virginia Main Street and Main Street America, because we want to know what we should be doing at a national level. We try to keep up with what we see happening in trends. We've done a lot with entrepreneurial ecosystems over the last few years, really done some deep dives into small scale manufacturing coming to downtowns. So we're trying, but what do you think you need to continue your success or to create greater success in your programs? What's that need? Is it something at the local level, or is it bigger than even at the local level? What do you need?
Well, if I could jump in real quick, I'll go back to a thought that I had. I work in tourism, and so that just inspires me daily to work better with the Main Street program, even before I sat on the board. And just because we rely on Main Street also relies on tourism, and having that collaborative relationship and trying to find new ways of doing things. As far as what the program needs to succeed, being a board member for a few years now, I think one of the things we struggle with is finding the best board members. And it's probably, I think it's nation and worldwide when serving on nonprofits, is getting folks to understand what their role is in serving on a nonprofit. I think part of what we had issues with is people just wanted to serve on the Main Street board. That sounds fun, and didn't actually understand what it means to serve on a nonprofit board. So more education on that, but then also how to help our executive directors recruit the right people so that they can help, so that the board members can help the executive director, and if you're lucky, any other staff, in the execution of your goals and objectives. For our association, a lot of the board members are small business owners. They do not have a plethora of time because they are trying to maintain their livelihood. So how to help our executive directors find or even brainstorm a wider range of potential board members, or even just volunteers, instead of just relying on those 9 board members.
Yeah, good point, Katie. There's lots of tips and tricks both boards and executive directors can use to address those issues. So there's a lot of education available out there on it. And it's just like your funding base, you want a diverse mix of board members as well. So it doesn't do you well to just have people from downtown on your board. We want residents, we want somebody from your school system, or if tourism is a big component, that we have some people that are really tourism oriented businesses or connected to the tourism entity. It goes back to what's the strategy. You know, certainly if you're in a college town, we better have some people from the university or the student population working with us on our Main Street organization. So it really is a matter of nurturing those people. One of the sessions here at the California Main Street Conference yesterday was just about leadership development, and it was really about don't let anybody come on the board who just wants to put that they're on the Main Street board on their resume. Ask them what they're going to do for you. And I'm a firm believer in we have to set a really high standard for our board members because then they'll perform to that. We don't want to just go out and say, hey, do you want to join the Main Street board without telling them exactly what that means. Here's one of the things I always like to say to any new board member, this I always made as a piece in their job description, is that you will lead this organization. You will agree to be president if asked. And that sort of, you know, scares some people away to say, well, I don't want to be president. But this is a leadership development program. Nobody should have to be president for more than 3 years. That's my tops. We have to have transition in place. And if everybody takes their turn, when I was a local executive director, it changed every year. So everybody knew that their turn was coming and they paid attention. They paid attention to how the person before them ran the meeting. I had some that came in the day before our board meetings and wanted to sit down with me to go through what are all the action items on the agenda. And I was happy to do that. But we have to encourage the shared leadership role. And so I always like to say, if you're coming on this board, you have to agree to be board president if asked. You might not be asked, but I need to know that you're willing to do that. And I think that brings a greater sense of ownership to being on the board and what our expectation is. I need you to be involved in fundraising. I need you to be involved in finding your replacement when that time comes. I need you to lead a project or lead a committee. Because staff can't do all of that. And when we lay those things out to board members, then they come in more with a realistic idea of what their job will be versus they come on and then you go, well, now we're working on fundraising. And they go, whoa, nobody told me I had to do fundraising. Well, you're on a nonprofit board of directors, you know, so it's ultimately the board's responsibility to assure the funding is in place for the program. And so, yeah, part of that is fundraising. And it might not mean that I need you to go out and make 10 cold calls, but you might host a fundraising event. You might give me leads. You might be the one who can write that fundraising letter. You might be a good grant writer. There is some role for every board member to play in the fundraising for the organization. So I think if you set expectations for what you want out of your board members, that's when they'll perform to that level. And I also believe in terms, you know, if your bylaws say you can serve 3 consecutive or 2 3-year consecutive terms, then you have to rotate off for at least a year before you can come back. Because if people have been serving on a board for 10 years and, you know, people don't feel like there's an opportunity for more community engagement. Sorry, Kyle, I'm not following your rule of be brief and let others speak.
One thing that came out related to this, that came out of last year's retreat, we did a appreciative inquiry around fund development, fundraising, and marketing. You know, those are sort of those 3 interconnected parts of being a sustainable organization. One is the one-on-one, having the relationships that you need, being very intentional about fund development. Program it into your year of activities that are specifically designed to build relationships, new relationships, and build ones that already exist. Fundraising are those activities that you're going to do. So they're just part of it. But if you're doing the fund development piece of it and you have those relationships, the ask is relatively easy to do versus a cold call to somebody. I think that's what people get tripped up on. That fundraising isn't that cold call. So that board members aren't being asked to do cold calls, maybe sometimes, but majority of the time, it's about having those relationships that bring the resources to the organization. So fundraising activities go across the gamut. but then you also have that marketing responsibility of casting a wide net with communicating to everybody about the great work that you're doing and the impact that you're having within the district, so that everybody has a clear understanding of why your organization exists. So those three pieces work together to really create that sustainable model for your nonprofit.
Yeah, and you know, Joan Gary's reading today too was also about, you know, when somebody can support you with funding to solve a problem, you know, they really want to help with that. And so if you can explain to people, here's our problem, you know, either we have some vacant space, we have upper vacant stories, or we have a particular issue, like we have a train that we need to renovate. You know, people see a problem and they want to help you address that. So it's all in that sort of messaging as well. What else does anybody need to succeed with their program?
Fredericksburg is kind of in a transitional period as we've moved on to a new executive director, and fundraising is definitely something that we need to work on. But we're trying to temper that with a kind of, we're trying to create some like small win things that we can do, that we can deliver very quickly, so people can see what we're doing and the type of things that we're focusing on. So when it is time to work on the larger projects, we have buy-in. So that is like the strategy that we're trying to go for. And then just overall communication, I think we are, for Fredericksburg, we kind of need to reset the expectations and the mission of Main Street. And I think trying to wade through that is going to be a little challenging because people were used to how Anne was doing things, but the way that she was doing things long term isn't really playing out into like real understanding of what we're trying to accomplish. So I think those are our two biggest things. And then getting an employee to help Brendan out, you know, that would be great.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that the speaker here yesterday talked about with board leadership too was sort of making sure that the executive director, if they're the main contact for some of those fundraising things, that board members also know those people. You know, that's even part of a transition, right? So that if your executive directors are leaving, do you know who all your partners and sponsors, so that you as board members have the same connections, so that it isn't lost and that it's one person's way of doing things, but that we're establishing relationships with the whole organization. So that's a real key piece. I'm glad you brought that up, and I saw somebody suggested maybe that's a topic for a future board forum, is to talk more about fundraising as well. There's so many ways to develop, as Kyle said. It's not, the first thing isn't about the cold calls. The first thing is about the relationships and the communication, you know, so that people understand they can't just hear from you when you want money. We have to, you know, roll out, here's why we're doing this. This is why you track all your measurements, right? So that you can show your value, even when you're running special events. You know, what was the impact of that? Don't just show me the pretty photos, but if you're having a festival, are we doing a zip code survey so that we can say, you know, we had people here from 7 states and from 80 different Virginia cities, and we had 5,800 participants. Throw numbers at them and say, this is why we do it, and this is why we need you to support us. So we have to do a much better job also of capturing our impact and sharing that. Other ideas of things that you need to succeed? You're all set for success, I guess.
I know, it feels like they're all set. That's right. It's about 7 after 12, so we've, you know, got about 7 minutes, 8 minutes to go. Well, 7 minutes to go. So, but that doesn't mean we need to stop right now. Yeah. So feel free if there's maybe one more, and then we'll wrap up.
Jessica said, finding the right board members. You know, that's that conversation you have to have in addition to saying, here's what the job is. Ask them why. Be curious. Listen to what they want for downtown. Don't, let them tell you what they're going to be good at, what value what value they will add, or what project they want to leave. Get them excited about not just coming to a monthly meeting, but actually taking action on something that your downtown needs, and look at their connections. So we get to be choosy in who we get to bring on as board members. When I was a local executive director, we had our first board retreat. And we came up with, people with no ideas were bad ideas. And somebody wanted to remove the dam on the river, which, made everybody on our board drop their jaws, because he said, well, but dams are relicensed every 25 years. So let's fight the dam and make them take it away so we get our waterfall back. And everybody was like, we're just this brand new little Main Street organization. But when he had his next idea was that we have a waiting list of people ready to serve on our board of directors. People went, you know what, that's not so far-fetched. The removing the dam, that was a big one, but we could have a waiting list for board members. And at our very next meeting, we looked at the matrix, we looked who we wanted to have on our board for skill sets. We came up with a list of 12 people. We reached out to them. 6 of the 12 said yes. The next time you have an opening on your board of directors, we would be interested, because we reached out to them and said, your skill sets have been identified as something we really need at Main Street. And from there on, it just, it's up to you to make it prestigious to serve and be, happy about serving, and share that through your own social media of your participation in Main Street. And then others want to take your place, so part of that is making sure you're doing a good job, showing that you're having a good time and getting things done. But really, thinking about, well, who do we need on the board? And, unfortunately, sometimes some communities get to the end of the year and they have 3 vacancies and they'll take anybody. And you just need to take a deep breath and go, no, we need to have effective people. So let's do the proper outreach here. Let's brainstorm a little more and find the people that are really going to help us make a change. So I'll encourage you in that.
This is Glenn again from Culpeper. One of the things that we do to vet our board members is they have to have been working as a volunteer in one of our events or over a period of time. Then we move them into a chairmanship of the event, and from there onto the board, and from the board then we move them into the executive committee slots. So we grow them as time goes along. But one of the things that what I really wanted to talk about was what we need to program to succeed. Our business staff, or our professional staff, is we have a director, we have an events coordinator, and we had an administrative assistant half-time. We've converted that half-time administrative assistant into a full-time position, and we've paid for it by the fact that she's very adept at graphics and things. So she's been doing a tremendous amount of fresh graphics and getting postings out onto social media and other advertising venues. And so we've cut off about 90% of the graphics that we were having done outside, and that's enabled us to pay her salary for the other half of her time. So that's something that I feel really was a tremendous change that's helped us move forward. I won't say succeed, because we succeed, but this just helped us improve our look. We had just renovated our website, and so all of our graphics now match the same style and color and things.
That's fantastic. Yeah, leverage your own staff. Yeah, I was in a city of just under 13,000, and I had 2.5 staff members under me. We just needed it. There was so much going on, and people supported that. So the board worked hard at making sure we had the funding to pay for all of those positions.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing for a lot of this, just in closing, that it's all hands on deck. that it's not up to the executive director to sustain the organization. The board has a big responsibility. They're the policymakers. They're the governors of that program, and they need to be active in doing it. And I know that that can be a big challenge. And creating that pipeline comes down to creating those opportunities for those relationships, making sure that they're part of your action plan, your work plan, your strategic plan, that the strategic plan isn't just about your design projects or your events or even, you know, your economic development activities. You should have in there your organizational pieces too, and really think about how that's going to be addressed throughout the year, and look at those opportunities. Another thing that I want to just say in closing is appreciative inquiry can really help, is very motivating. And so you ask a question like, describe a time that felt ignited and inspired to take on a new project. You know, right off the bat, you're thinking of something really motivating. And if you frame a question like that at a board meeting and create some time for these generative moments, you'll find some creative answers versus you know, checking off the box, going through the agenda. Create those times for these generative conversations, and appreciative inquiry can help you out with that. Strategic doing is a great model for it. But I'm going to stop there because it is on the nose, 12:15, and I don't want to be between you and your lunch. So I want to thank Kathy Frazier, Kathy LaPlante, all the Kathys, so much for being here today. It's always a pleasure to work with you, and you bring so much experience and passion to the conversation. So thank you so much for making time while you're out in California. So I would think
Love
everybody
being
give her a
here.
round of applause.
I'd love to join you any other time, so just let me know.
All right, be careful what you wish for, what you ask for. All right, so everybody know that at the end of the slide deck, which I'll share with you, everybody's contact information is there. Even expanding out further to our larger family of the Economic Development Community Vitality, our division. So please reach out. We are here to help you with these economic development goals and helping you to create a greater quality of life. So thank you so much for being here today. Expect the follow-up emails soon. Peace.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Something we're glad to get rid of them.